Hi, Flow friends. Welcome back to English Podcast Flow. Frank, today's topic is really special, and I think it's one that a lot of English learners shy away from. But it's so important.
Hey, how are you guys doing today? Yeah, Alice, you're absolutely right. Today we're talking about spirituality and faith, and how to have respectful conversations about these topics in English. And I want to say right from the start that this is not about converting anyone or saying one belief system is better than another. This is simply about giving you the language tools to express your own beliefs, to understand others, and to navigate these conversations with grace and respect. Because spirituality is such a personal and meaningful part of many people's lives.
Exactly. And whether you're religious, spiritual, but not religious, agnostic, atheist, or still figuring out what you believe, you need to be able to talk about these topics because they come up in everyday life. Someone might invite you to a religious service or ask about your beliefs or share something about their own faith journey. And having the vocabulary to engage in these conversations respectfully is really valuable, especially in diverse, multicultural environments where you're going to encounter people with all different belief systems.
So today we're going to explore how to talk about faith, spirituality, religious practices, and beliefs in a way that's open, honest, and respectful. Let's dive in. Before we start, thank you so much for being part of this learning community. Your presence here means everything to us.
If these conversations are helping you, would you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications? It helps us so much.
And please leave a like. Every single one helps other learners discover these episodes and join our community.
We're so grateful. Now, let's talk about spirituality.
Alice, let's start with something that can feel really vulnerable, which is talking about your own spiritual beliefs. I grew up in a Catholic family, and for most of my childhood and teenage years, I went to church every Sunday with my parents. It was just part of our family routine, you know? We'd wake up, get dressed in our nice clothes, drive to church, attend Mass, which is what Catholics call their religious service. And then we'd usually have a big family breakfast afterward. And for a long time, I didn't really question it. It was just what we did, and I found comfort in the rituals and the community. But as I got older, especially when I went to college, I started questioning a lot of the teachings and trying to figure out what I actually believed versus what I had been taught to believe. And that journey was really difficult because I felt like I was disappointing my parents by not being as devout as they were.
That must have been so hard, Frank, especially because family and faith are so intertwined for many people. How did you navigate those conversations with your family?
It took time and a lot of patience on both sides. Eventually, I sat down with my parents and I said something like, I want to be honest with you about where I am spiritually. I'm still exploring what I believe. And while I respect the faith I was raised in, and I'm grateful for the values it gave me, I need to figure out my own path right now. That doesn't mean I'm rejecting everything you taught me, but I need space to question and discover what feels authentic to me. And that phrase, my own path or my own journey, is really useful when talking about spirituality, because it acknowledges that everyone's experience is different and personal.
I love how you phrased that because you were honest about your doubts, while still showing respect for their beliefs and acknowledging the positive impact their faith had on you. That's such a mature way to handle it. My spiritual journey has been completely different from yours, Frank. I wasn't raised in a particularly religious household. My parents were what you might call culturally religious, meaning they identified with a religion and we celebrated the major holidays. But we didn't regularly attend services or talk much about God or spirituality at home. So for most of my life, I didn't really think about these questions. I just lived my life without much spiritual reflection.
What changed for you?
It was actually going through a really difficult period in my life, a time when I felt lost and alone that made me start seeking something deeper. I started reading books about different spiritual traditions Not just one religion, but many, because I was curious about what different wisdom traditions had to say about life's big questions. Why are we here? What happens after we die? How do we find meaning and purpose? And through that exploration, I developed what I would call a spiritual practice that's not tied to any one religion, but draws from many sources. I meditate regularly. I practice gratitude. I try to live according to values like compassion and kindness. And I believe there's something greater than myself, though I don't necessarily call it God. Some people might call what I have a personal spirituality as opposed to organized religion.
And that's completely valid. I think it's important for people to know that when talking about beliefs in English, there are many ways to describe your spiritual identity. You can say I'm Christian, I'm Muslim, I'm Hindu, I'm Buddhist, I'm Jewish. If you identify with a specific religion, or you can say I'm spiritual, but not religious, which is exactly what you're describing, Alice. That means you have spiritual beliefs and practices, but you don't follow a specific organized religion.
Right? And you can also say I'm agnostic, which means you're not sure if God exists or not. You're open to the possibility, but you don't claim to know for certain. Or I'm atheist, which means you don't believe in God or gods. And it's important to know these terms so you can both describe yourself and understand when others describe their beliefs to you.
Let's talk about specific religious practices and the vocabulary around them. Because if you're having conversations with people about their faith, you'll encounter these terms. Starting with Christianity, which is the dominant religion in many English-speaking countries. Christians typically attend church, usually on Sundays. The person who leads the service might be called a pastor, a priest, a minister, or reverend, depending on the denomination, which is the specific branch of Christianity they belong to. Catholics, Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, these are all different denominations.
And during the service, there's usually prayer, which is talking to God either out loud or silently, singing hymns, which are religious songs, and a sermon, which is when the religious leader gives a talk or lesson based on the Bible, which is the Christian holy book. Christians might also pray before meals, saying what's called grace, or saying grace, which is a short prayer of thanks for the food. And many Christians observe Lent, which is a 40-day period before Easter where they might give up something they enjoy as a form of sacrifice and reflection.
Moving to Islam, Muslims pray 5 times a day facing Mecca, which is the holiest city in Islam. These prayers are called Salah or Salat. They attend a mosque, which is their place of worship, especially for Friday prayers, which are communal. The holy book of Islam is the Quran or Quran, and Muslims observe Ramadan, which is a month of fasting from sunrise to sunset. During Ramadan, they don't eat or drink during daylight hours, and it's a time of spiritual reflection, prayer, and community.
In Judaism, Jewish people attend a synagogue, and their day of worship is Saturday, which is called Shabbat or the Sabbath. The Torah is their most important religious text, and they observe many holidays throughout the year like Rosh, which is the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, and Hanukkah and Passover. Jewish dietary laws are called kosher, so when food is kosher, it means it follows these religious guidelines about what can be eaten and how it should be prepared.
Hinduism is one of the oldest religions in the world, and it's quite diverse with many different practices and beliefs. Hindus often have a home shrine or altar where they might pray and make offerings to various deities. They might visit a temple for larger ceremonies and festivals. Important concepts include karma, which is the idea that your actions have consequences that affect your future, and dharma, which relates to duty, righteousness, and living ethically. Hinduism also includes the practice of yoga and meditation as spiritual disciplines.
Buddhism focuses heavily on meditation and mindfulness as paths to enlightenment, which is a state of perfect peace and understanding. Buddhists follow the teachings of the Buddha, and they often practice at temples or meditation centers. Core concepts include the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, which are guidelines for living ethically and developing wisdom and compassion. Many Buddhist traditions emphasize non-attachment, compassion for all living beings, and the idea that suffering comes from desire and attachment.
Alice, one of the most important things about talking about spirituality is knowing how to do it respectfully, especially when you're talking to someone whose beliefs are different from your own. I remember having a conversation a few years ago with a coworker who was Muslim, and he was telling me about Ramadan and how meaningful it was to him. And I was genuinely curious and wanted to understand more. But I was also nervous about asking the wrong questions or accidentally saying something offensive. So I started by saying, "I'd love to learn more about Ramadan if you're comfortable sharing. I don't know much about it, and I want to make sure I'm respectful." And he really appreciated that approach because I was showing genuine interest, while also acknowledging my lack of knowledge and asking for his permission to ask questions.
That's such a good approach because you're coming from a place of curiosity and respect rather than judgment. And I think that's the key to these conversations. You ask open-ended questions like, what does your faith mean to you? Or how do you practice your beliefs? Rather than asking questions that might feel invasive or judgmental, like, do you really believe that? Or why do you do that? Those kinds of questions can feel confrontational, even if you don't mean them that way.
Exactly. And if someone shares something about their faith that you don't understand, you can say, "That's interesting. Can you tell me more about that?" Or, "I'm not familiar with that practice. What's the significance of it?" These questions show you're listening and you want to understand, not that you're judging or dismissing their beliefs. And here's something really important. If someone is sharing their faith with you and you don't believe the same things, you don't have to pretend you agree. You can listen respectfully, without adopting their beliefs. You can say something like, "Thank you for sharing that with me. It's really meaningful to hear about what's important to you, even though my own beliefs are different."
That's perfect because it honors their experience while maintaining your own boundaries and authenticity. And on the flip side, if someone asks you about your beliefs and you don't want to share, that's completely okay too. You can politely decline by saying something like, "I prefer to keep my spiritual beliefs private, but I appreciate you asking," or "That's something very personal to me and I don't usually discuss it. But thank you for your interest." Most people will respect that boundary.
And what about situations where someone is trying to convert you or push their beliefs on you in a way that makes you uncomfortable? How do you handle that respectfully but firmly?
That's a tough one because you want to be respectful, but you also need to protect your own boundaries. You can say something like, "I appreciate that you want to share your faith with me, and I can see it's very important to you. However, I'm not interested in converting or changing my beliefs right now. I hope you can respect that." And if they continue to push, you can be more direct and say, "I've asked you to stop bringing this up, and I need you to respect my boundary. Let's talk about something else." You don't owe anyone an explanation for your beliefs or lack thereof.
That's really important. And I also think it's worth mentioning that in professional settings, like at work, you generally want to be more careful about religious discussions because they can become sensitive very quickly. In many workplaces, especially in the US, there's an understanding that religion is a personal matter and it's best not to proselytize, which means actively trying to convert others to your religion. You can certainly mention your faith if it comes up naturally. Like if someone asks about your weekend and you say, "I went to church with my family," but you wouldn't want to make coworkers uncomfortable by repeatedly bringing up religion or assuming everyone shares your beliefs.
Frank, let's talk about how spirituality shows up in everyday conversations and life. Because it's not always about formal religious discussions. Sometimes it's just little phrases and expressions that people use that have spiritual or religious origins, even if they don't consciously think about it that way. Like when something good happens, someone might say, "I'm blessed," or "God is good," or "the universe is looking out for me." These are ways of expressing gratitude that have a spiritual undertone, and you'll hear them all the time in casual conversation.
Absolutely. And when someone is going through a difficult time, You might hear people say, "I'll pray for you," or "You're in my thoughts and prayers," or sending positive energy your way. These are expressions of care and support that have spiritual connotations. If you're someone who doesn't pray, you can say, "I'll be thinking of you," or "I'm sending good thoughts," or "I'm here for you." If you need anything, the sentiment is the same. You're showing you care, but you're using language that feels authentic to you.
Right? And then there are phrases that have religious origins but are used in completely secular ways now. Like, "Thank God it's Friday," which we often shorten to TG, or "God bless you" when someone sneezes, or "Oh my God" as an exclamation of surprise. Many people use these phrases without any religious meaning at all. They're just common expressions. But it's good to know where they come from so you understand the context.
What about when people talk about spiritual practices in a non-religious way, like meditation, mindfulness, yoga? These have roots in various religious traditions, but many people practice them in a secular way now, just for the mental and physical health benefits.
That's such a good point. You might hear someone say, "I meditate every morning as part of my self-care routine," or "I do yoga to manage stress." And they're not necessarily doing it for spiritual reasons, even though these practices have spiritual origins. And that's completely valid. People take from spiritual traditions what resonates with them and what improves their lives, and they don't have to adopt the entire religious framework to benefit from these practices.
And then there's the concept of finding meaning and purpose, which is inherently spiritual even if you're not religious. People might talk about their calling or their purpose in life, or feeling like they're meant to do something. These are spiritual questions about why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing with our lives. And you can have these deep, meaningful conversations without necessarily bringing God or religion into it. You might say something like, "I've been thinking a lot about what gives my life meaning," or "I'm trying to figure out what my purpose is," and that opens up a philosophical conversation. That can be really enriching. Alice, let's talk about something really practical, which is how to navigate religious holidays and invitations to religious events, especially if you don't share the same faith as the person inviting you.
This comes up all the time, especially in diverse communities. Like, someone might invite you to their Christmas celebration, or a friend might ask if you want to come to their mosque for Friday prayers, or a coworker might invite you to celebrate Diwali with their family. And the first thing to know is that these invitations are usually meant as an honor and an opportunity to share something meaningful with you. They're not usually trying to convert you or make you uncomfortable. They're saying, "This is important to me, and I'd like to share it with you."
So, how do you respond if you're invited to something like that?
If you're interested and open to the experience, you can say, "Thank you so much for inviting me. I'd love to come and learn more about your tradition." And you can ask practical questions like, "Is there a dress code I should follow?" Or, "Are there any customs I should know about?" This shows respect and a genuine desire to participate appropriately. And when you attend, you can be respectful and observant without participating in ways that feel inauthentic to you. For example, if you attend a church service and everyone stands to pray, you can stand out of respect, but you don't have to say the prayer yourself.
And if you're not comfortable attending, or you simply can't for whatever reason, you can politely decline by saying something like, "Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me. I really appreciate it, but I won't be able to make it this time. I hope you have a wonderful celebration." You don't need to explain why you're declining unless you want to.
Exactly. And when religious holidays come up, even if you don't celebrate them yourself, you can acknowledge them respectfully. If your coworker celebrates Christmas, you can say, "Merry Christmas. I hope you have a great time with your family." If your friend celebrates Eid, you can say, "Eid Mubarak," which is the traditional greeting. If someone celebrates Hanukkah, you can say, "Happy Hanukkah." These small gestures show that you recognize and respect what's important to them, even if you don't celebrate the same holidays.
And if someone wishes you a happy holiday that you don't celebrate, you can simply say, "Thank you. Same to you," or "I don't celebrate that holiday, but I appreciate the kind wishes." Most people will appreciate your graciousness.
Now, we'd love to hear from you. Go to the comments and share. What role does spirituality or faith play in your life?
Or if you're comfortable sharing, tell us about a meaningful spiritual experience you've had, or a question you've been exploring. This is a respectful space for all beliefs.
Remember, there's no judgment here. We're all on our own journeys. Share what feels right for you.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. Spirituality and faith are such deeply personal topics, and we hope we've given you the language to navigate these discussions with grace and confidence.
Remember, the most important thing is to approach these conversations with respect, curiosity, and an open heart. Whether you're talking about your own beliefs or learning about someone else's, there's so much we can learn from each other when we listen with genuine interest. And it's okay if you're still figuring out what you believe. Many people are on that journey their whole lives. What matters is being authentic and respectful, both to yourself and to others.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning, and keeping that English flowing. We're all just trying to make sense of this beautiful, mysterious life. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye.